I got a name for this now.
Oh, what is it?
Yeah, I made a name. The name of this is Ask Azren. Isn't that creative?
I like that.
It's
I
not
like that.
creative, but that's okay.
It's
Because
fun.
I used to have something called Ask the Language Nerd. I used
Okay.
to have something else called. I used to like take people's questions, and then I
Okay.
would like answer their questions. Like people would ask on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, and then they'd ask, and then I would answer them.
Okay.
And then like I stopped doing it. I stopped doing it because it took so long to edit. It was such a long time to edit those and shoot them and edit. It was taking forever. I was like, I can't do this. So I stopped doing it. And then we're doing these, and I was like, what should I call it? And I was like, oh, Ask Azren. I'm like, oh, didn't I do like Ask the Language here? I was like, oh, cool. So now it's Ask Azren.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So anyway, it's recording. It's been recording for a second here. So hello everybody. Welcome to Ask Azren. And we should have Ask Azren and Solana. Solana's here too.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, Solana. So Solana, what's new? Things are good?
Things are good. Busy but good.
Tell us a fun fact. People should get to know you too.
Oh my gosh. All right, this is boring, but fun fact. I go to school in Kingston, Ontario. I go to Queen's University, and I'm studying global development and psychology.
I actually didn't know that. Well, there we go. I learned something new.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, what do you want to ask?
All right. So the first one is, how do you measure successful teaching and learning?
Good question. Let's start with learning.
Okay.
If students are actually able to, I would say generally speaking, if people are actually able to communicate better in whatever the target language is, they're actually able to communicate better than they could before, then there's progress, right? I think that's probably one of the simplest ways. If someone's learning goal is different, like if they have a specific learning goal, like maybe their objective is not around being able to communicate, maybe it's around improving their pronunciation, for example. Well, then we'll look at, okay, what sounds or what were you doing before that gave you a quote unquote bad pronunciation? Or what were some of the learning gaps that you had around pronunciation, for example? And then can we actually measure those over time to say, oh, look, you used to do this, and now look, you don't. So I think it's about basically identifying in as measurable and objective terms as possible, like what is your baseline, and then in as measurable and objective terms as possible, track that progress. And there's various ways to do that, depending on what skill you're working on. So I'll give you a couple examples. So let's say someone's working on written grammar.
Okay.
And let's say they're trying to fix their, I don't know. Let's say we've really been working on the past tense, let's say. Let's say we've done past, present, future. Let's say those are three we've looked at. Okay. And what I might say is, okay, I want you to do X writing assignment. I'll give some writing assignment. We're going to look at every single verb, look at how many verbs were there, how many did you conjugate correctly in the present, past, future. We'll make like a chart, right? How many present tense verbs were conjugated correctly? How many were conjugated incorrectly? How many past tense verbs are conjugated correctly? How many incorrectly? How many future tense verbs are conjugated correctly? How many were incorrect? And we'll get a percentage. Oh, wow, looks like as of today, on what's the date today? August 7th, 2020, you're conjugating 50% of your past tense verbs correctly, 50% of your present, and wow, only 25% of future.
Right.
And then we're going to work on it, and we're going to see, can we get that from 50? Can we get everything at 60% correct, for example? And then by the time they're doing their 10th assignment, wow, look, now you're doing 60% correct on everything. Wow, you've made a 10% or whatever improvement. Like, that's one example, a very measurable way you could do it. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to measure depending on what you're trying to improve, but as measurable as you possibly can is preferable. So the student and the teacher can physically see, like, wow, you are improving.
For sure.
So
for sure.
Sometimes it's tough to have it that measurable. You can't really, it's tough sometimes, but you do your best.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it doesn't have to be like just the defining aspect of success, right? Like it can just be like how you kind of I don't know, keep yourselves going over time, just to kind of remember where you started, I guess.
Yeah, or even like for example, like I can almost hear people's thought process of people watching this. Like if you think about like speaking, they might go, "Well, how the heck do you track speaking progress? Like what the heck do you do there? Like how do you do that?" Well, I'd probably say like something like you can't track number of errors. Well, you could, I suppose, when someone's talking. I've done it before where you're like tracking their errors as they speak. I've done that before. And we're trying to track as they speak to reduce their errors. I've done that. So the same thing in written, but you're actually listening as they speak and you're tracking on the side. I'm actually writing them down. Oh, correct, incorrect, correct, incorrect. And we're tracking it. That's possible. But you can even just do it. There's other ways to do it too, where you can say, okay, let's narrow the speaking in. Instead of saying speaking, let's say speaking about this topic, speaking about your daily routine. First, let's learn your routines. Let's learn how you talk about those. Right now, you can't talk about them at all. Let's say today's day one, like Solana's learning Chinese. All right, Solana, we're gonna learn Mandarin daily routines. And you're like, I don't know any of them. Great, you know nothing. So we know your starting point is 0. That's perfect. And then we see in a month or 2 months or whatever, like when I ask you about daily routines, what can you say with a reasonable amount of fluency, right? And that's a very good way to measure it too. And that's speaking oriented. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. And what about your personal teaching? Like, what do you consider, I don't know, like a successful day for your teaching, sort of? Like, do you have any goals for yourself? Is it very fluid based on the person that you're teaching?
So every person or group tends to have specific things that we're working towards. As a general whole, most of them do. Most students have some things that we're trying to work towards. And for me, it's successful if we actually move towards what they're trying to work towards. That's probably the general way that I view it.
Okay.
I do have certain students that we don't have such a, it's a minority, but I do have certain students where we don't have such a goal-oriented approach, certain groups and certain students. So like, for example, I've got this one class that I run at 2 people, and we don't particularly have a goal that we're working towards. And it's funny, now this is becoming like personal therapy for me, because I don't know how I feel about that class, for example. I'm like, should we have something? Like, it's a debate I have, actually. I actually do think about it. Like, do all classes need a specific goal that we're working towards? I think generally it's a good idea, generally speaking. But I've got certain students where it's almost like language learning is almost like some hobby for them. It's just something they like, and it almost doesn't feel right to be like, let's really work towards this and let's kind of work towards this kind of goal. Like, I don't know. There's a couple students I've got that way. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel. And I haven't fully made up my mind. I think as a general rule, I think it makes sense to have specific goals you're working towards, but I wonder if there's certain exceptions to it. I do wonder. I don't know. Yeah. That's just some musings in my mind, but
yeah, for sure. I think about that too, like all the time, just because we're so tuned in to have specific goals or like measurements of success that when we don't, we feel bad about ourselves and we feel like we failed ourselves and the people around us, sort of thing. But then it's also really nice. Also, my thing is, now that the world has so many opportunities for us, it's really easy to set like an infinite number of goals for us to do. But then it's like, it kind of takes the fun out of learning things, because now you're only learning for a purpose. You're not learning because you love the language, or you want to travel, or you just really like language learning and you don't want to assign like a goal to it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of nice that you have both aspects of it, where you are like keeping track with people who have certain goals, so you're being motivated and they are too. But then it's also just maybe really nice to have people who like hanging out with you, learning a language, just like you're a part of their.
I think then it's like the debate not the debate, but like what I wonder is like you have to aim at something. You can't just, I think, maybe I'm wrong.
Why do you have to aim at something?
Well, because if the goal is to actually, I don't know, like if the goal for if in their mind, like they're coming to class for a reason, why are they coming to class? Are they coming to class for like a hangout buddy? Then
Mhm.
maybe we don't need a goal. Are they coming to class because they looked me in the eye and they said, I want to actually learn this language someday? Well, we got to aim at something, I think. Maybe. And I'm not sure. I'm actually just thinking out loud. I think we have to aim at something.
Um, that also depends, I guess, on their time frame. Like if they're just like generally, I want to learn a language, I don't have a lot of time in my life, so maybe just this hour is me working towards it while not putting so much pressure on myself. You know?
Yeah, I know. Like one thing I've thought about, like this is it's very funny. Just like literally last night, yesterday/today, actually. There's a class that one of my teachers is running, and we got some feedback from that student saying, "Hey, it's a parent, and one of their kids are taking the classes, and basically they're like, hey, I want to make sure this is like a light and fun experience for the kids, and like." The goal, so it's funny that the goal for that class, so there's a few levels here. First of all, in my head and on paper, I know what we're trying to help these kids learn. I know what we're working on. I know the games we're going to play. I know what concepts the kids are going to learn from it. But those aren't communicated particularly with the kids. So we'll tell them, hey, we're going to do this game. We're going to learn these kinds of things. But we're not specifically saying, hey, all right, we're going to try and learn this. And we're going to do it. Like, no, it's like, hey, we're going to play a game. We're going to learn this. Like, okay. And they're more excited about the game. And the byproduct is that they're learning. But I still know what we're trying to accomplish. That's something to think about. Does the student need to be super involved in the goal if they're not super attached to it? Maybe, maybe not. And then also in that class, like I got to be honest, like I there still is a goal in my mind. It's, or rather, maybe it's not a goal, but it's a class focus. It's not a goal, but there's a class focus, which is, hey, it's got to be light and fun. If the kids had fun and there was something with French that was happening with French, then that's the goal. We're not really super concerned with how quickly they learn. Hopefully they remember some things, but the goal is that they have a positive experience and there is some French happening at the same time. Right? So like I'm not sure, but as of today, like I think there has to be some focus of what we're working on. Go call it a focus, call it a goal, call it what you want to call it. I think there has to be something. So we know what direction we're going in. We know we're on the same page as to what we're doing here. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But
Yeah, for sure.
I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
No, I think that makes sense. Especially for, classes that people are trusting you to teach them. Like, I think you having a goal would be really good. All right. Let's do one more question.
Sure.
How to avoid burnout and to maintain consistency? Because even for me, like I'm really good at starting something like full on, head on, and then it's really hard when kind of life gets in the way and then you start prioritizing other things over it and it's not as fun anymore. So do you have any tips?
I have a few. So the first thing is that basically for the most part, most people start and stop projects.
Okay.
In my experience, I do too. You start and start projects. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it's okay to start and stop. I think some people feel it's a bad thing. Like, oh, I started, then I stopped. I was like, oh. And some people feel like maybe they shouldn't start again because if they start again, how do they know if they're going to start and actually quit? Like, why would I bother starting if I'm just going to stop it? You know what I mean? Like, that's a thought process. When I was a teenager, I remember having this thought. I'd be like, oh, I was so interested in juggling. And then I stopped juggling. And I was like, juggling is going to be my thing. I was super into juggling. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do YouTube. Oh, YouTube's going to be my thing. And then I wasn't interested anymore. And so, I think, and I used to wonder, like, man, like I quit doing magic tricks. I like magic tricks too. I quit doing magic tricks after like 3 months.
A lot about you. Okay.
Can I like go into juggling? Like, should I waste my time with that if I'm just gonna quit it? Like, oh my God. So I can relate to that. But I think it's okay to I think it's okay, especially if you're gonna be starting, stopping, you can actually make progress in a start, stop. So you can still progress with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you. First of all, should you be consistent? Sure. Will you learn more? Sure. But I don't think you should be worried about like going into it. Will I be consistent? That's number one. I think number two is, if possible, and so often people start something and then they prioritize something else. Life gets in the way, things happen, and they stop. But my thing is, instead of stopping, can you reduce it?
Okay.
Can you reduce it? And even if it's a bare minimum, can you reduce it or change the schedule around it? So for example, let's say it's a language class, for instance. Maybe you have the class first thing in the morning where it's maybe you're really busy. Something's happened in your works and your life is now super busy. And you do it outside of your usual work hours so it doesn't interfere with the day. Or can you use it as a break? Can you, or maybe it's like you can't take classes anymore, but you're like, I'm gonna do Duolingo once every month for 5 minutes. That's better than completely stopping it because it's still kind of there and you're still thinking about it. So that's something I think about too. Yeah, those are a few things that I think about. Like, there's nothing wrong with stopping and starting again. Nothing wrong with it. I think about, can you reduce it and not cut it out? Yeah, those are a few thoughts I have.
Okay, sounds good. And how do you feel about Duolingo? Do you think it's a really useful tool?
So my opinion of Duolingo has not come from my personal experience of Duolingo, because I don't know if I've ever used Duolingo. I'm sure I've used the app, but I don't think I've used it in an extended way. My opinion of Duolingo comes from probably hundreds of people that I've talked to and hearing their experiences of it. And here's my thoughts based on what people tell me and when I've talked to people, is that it's fine. It's fine, but you're not gonna become fluent by using Duolingo. Like, you can't just use Duolingo. It's cool. It's a tool, but it's like if you had to build a house and you're like, oh, I've got my nails, I want to build my house. You're like, well, you need some wood, you need a hammer, you need a saw, you need someone to you need like a pencil and some paper so you can draw the blueprints. You need like electrical wiring. Like, you can't go build a house with just some nails. Well, you can't build a house with nails. You can't just learn a language with Duolingo, generally speaking. I've met some exceptions, weirdly. I met this one guy that I was shocked at how well he spoke only using Duolingo. He wasn't fluent, but I was very baffled. I was like, what? I've met some some outside cases, but that's my general view. I think Duolingo has podcasts and stuff though too. So I think if you use their podcasts and they're using the application and you're looking at Duolingo forums, like if you're using every aspect of Duolingo, I think there's some value there, but most people are just going through the app.
For sure.
And again, it's fine, but it's not my favorite. I don't think it's like, oh my God, do this and you'll be fluent. Not necessarily.
For sure. And I still consider myself like a beginner, but I have done like 3 years of Spanish, and I'm going to say like it's much easier to have like a base and then go into Duolingo, because you know what you want, you know what you're looking for, you know what you need. Whereas I was trying to do French on it, and it's very hard because you don't know where to start and you don't know what they're teaching you. So like you said, like I think it's a good supplement, and I think if you're putting it with other things, it can be really helpful. But you're right, like you won't probably get a fluency from it just using that.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably, except for that one guy who's apparently just
there's always outliers, but probably not.
All right, perfect. That's all the questions I have for you today.
Okay, sounds good. Well, nice chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you.
Everyone, thank you for watching on YouTube and wherever else, and we'll see you next time.